Okay, hello everybody. I'm really glad you're here.
Hello.
Hello, and this is going to be very informal, especially since for newbies there may be questions based on my very first series of words, and I think the best way to proceed is in fact to ask them in time. So don't let anything get past you that you don't understand. Okay? So those are the ground rules, which I think make the most sense for this presentation. Now, having said that, this first view graph with the overlays is basically going to be my way of telling you almost everything you really need to know to do ARV. Um, and it'll focus on the first question we had, which was how come we have two photos that you look at and that they're those kind of choices. And so let me tell you that remote viewing has basically three different sessions. There's the remote viewing session, there's the precog feedback session, and I like to always say precognition begins here because your tasking is to describe and sketch your, and you all know we have a 6-digit random coordinate feedback target. Well, that's what this is. But to do the wagering, which is investing or to get the answer to a yes-no question, all of that is determined in the analysis judging phase. So that's what we have here in terms of three separate sessions wearing three separate hats. The viewer can do this session or it can be done by somebody else. Now, here's the key, is at feedback time, you will know what your target was for sure in the normal sense of the word. You'll be seeing it with your regular eyes and all of that. And you'll be able to interact strongly with that target. That's why precog begins here. But when you do your remote viewing session, you're using your remote viewing senses to describe and sketch what you're going to see here. Now, in regular remote viewing, in fact, you do the same thing when you get feedback, which is most of the time remote viewers do get feedback. In fact, some think it isn't even remote viewing if you don't plan on getting feedback and can expect to get feedback at some time. So the feedback session feeds back to the remote viewing session. I will overstate that, but believe it or not, in precognition, it cannot be overstated. Now, the analysis judging session is where this wagerable, we do a lot of wagering here, but even if it was a yes-no question, it's where the analysis goes on so that you can make a prediction. Or, sometimes you might not have a good enough transcript and the person might pass. But that's what this session is all about. Now notice, it's determined based on transcript matches. And I say matches because you have one transcript here with this one coordinate that is a match with two possible feedback targets. Now the reason we have two possible feedback targets is because in ARV, we're doing binary. You can do it with more than two, but we've found that binary is the best. At least I feel it's the best, is you have two possible outcomes, binary, two possible outcomes. We call those two possible outcomes two sides. In sports, it might be one side might be over, the other might be under. There might be a favorite winning team, an underdog team with what are called points. We're not going to get into the details of this now because it doesn't matter. It could be team A or team B. The point is there are only two possible outcomes. It could be yes, no. For financial movements where you're talking about prices, the two possible choices are an up move and a down move. So the key is there are two possible outcomes. And guess what? That's why there are two possible feedback targets. One would be associated with one possible outcome. The other would be associated with the other possible outcome. So that's actually what the associative means in associative remote viewing, that you are associating your coordinate, your transcript with the actual target that's associated with the winning side. There are two possible outcomes, but you're going to see what actually happens. Now let me see if I can even make that clearer by doing an example. Okay, so you have the idea. If there are any questions there, as I say, jump in. You can turn on your mics or you can say things. Okay, are there questions in here? For 2Qs. Okay, I'll talk about 2Qs, Lori, in a moment when you do 2. That was another one of the questions. But let's first make sure we understand 1, and then it'll be clear why there are 2.
Can I just ask a quick question, Marty, when you
Please.
get a second?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So, for example, if you're wagering on the outcome of a basketball game, so the reason why there's two targets is because one picture, like a happy face, is associated with the team winning, for example. Let's say that was the picture that everyone used, and then let's say a sad face, meaning that they lost, very simplistically. Is that what you mean, for example?
Not quite, because the pictures would never have that kind of association the way you put it. One picture might be a waterfall. The other picture might be something entirely different, like I'm just trying to think of what would be a good contrast. It might even be well, I don't want to use that one. No, just give me a minute to come up with a contrast. Since I've used water, it might be the Eiffel Tower or something like that, or it might be Stonehenge. So you wouldn't make the association where win and lose was happy face, not happy face. They're two separate pictures.
Random.
Which are they're prepared to be as different as possible. And we've got a team doing that. Okay, so I'll actually do a bit of that in this example here. But keep asking until it becomes clear. But right now we're talking just one coordinate making one prediction. And in a moment, Lori, I'll get to the way you introduced 2. Now, so your coordinate is associated with your transcript. So here's an example. The coordinate was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So obviously this is a made-up example. And this was a transcript, okay? Fair enough. Now, in the Winning Entanglements program, and there are other ARV approaches, but most of the people who are asking questions were newbies introduced to Winning Entanglement. The computer randomly associates oh no, wait, that's actually not right. Here it is. In the Wii computer, it randomly associates this coordinate, okay? So your coordinate with over or under. Now notice there are two sides, but it's random in terms of the coordinate associated with over or under. So we're doing an example like your basketball game. It could be over 195 points, 200 points, whatever the line is on that day for that game. And so let's just say in this example that the computer randomly associates the first coordinate, this coordinate, with over. Now, in WE, the first of the two possible photos, okay, and they come from a random set of like 800, they're pre-chosen. The very first one is considered the winning side. So we call that, when you've done WE, a lot of you have already done WE, that's photo site A, or actually the winning photo site. And you'll see in a moment what I mean by that. The second photo site is photo site B. Now look what happens. If over wins, then you're going to see with this coordinate at feedback time, photo site A. If under wins, you'll see photo site B because it wasn't the winner. We sometimes call that the other side.
Oh, I see.
You see,
it changes based on the outcome.
Exactly. And you need to have two choices because you don't know what the outcome is, but you are sitting here as a judge now, okay, saying, oh my gosh, look how well he did, let's say in this example with photo site A. Oh, well, the only reason he did so well there was because he saw it at feedback time and he did his tasking correctly. On the other hand, if there was a good match with photo site B, then you'd say, oh, then over didn't win, under must have won because he did a good match with photo site B. You as a viewer don't have to know any of this. All you do is describe your feedback target. The judge is the one who makes that decision. And that's why there are a pair of possible outcomes. There are two targets because there's two pair. So let's go a little bit further. The computer is not saying over will win. Photo site A is associated, yes, with the winning side, but if under wins, hey, hopefully you will have gotten a really, really good match with photo site B because that will be the one you'll see with this coordinate. You'll always see the truth, what actually happens. So you'll always see the appropriate photo site.
So Marty,
Uh-huh.
This is Julie.
Hi, Julie.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi. So basically, we're supposed to get a hit on one of the lines of code and no hit on the other, the second, on one of other
photo site
lines.
Yeah, but not
Okay.
necessarily the word. You're supposed to get a good match to either photo site A or photo site B.
I see.
Right?
Okay. That's where I was confused, because if I just see both of them and sketch them both, then I'm not doing it right.
That is correct. And I had someone, a newbie, did his very first one, and that's exactly what happened. He did a great job. I can't remember if I shared that with everybody. I was going to do that. But he did a great job of matching photo site A in one sort of series when he went down to his subconscious, and then he did a really great job of doing photo site B. Then he goes in and judges, and he got all excited because he got them both. What that shows is he's psychic, absolutely, right? Because he didn't know what they were going to be. In fact, they were randomly chosen after he did the transcript. But that's not the tasking. That doesn't help you. What I had to do there was give him a pass, right? Because you really want you want one match to be really, really good because it comes from the feedback where there's the truth.
I see. Okay.
So let's go a little further with this too simple example, if you will. In this case, So the coordinates associated with your feedback target, nothing to do with judging. And yet you're in here now wearing your judge's hat, let's say. You're doing self-judging. Most people do self-judging, but not everybody. And I'm actually going to talk about that next because I had another question which I want to take on next. It follows nicely. So in we've already done this part. Now, let's look at what happens here. Here's an example. Photo side A, in our example, you would get shown if over, in fact, wins. That's just our example. In this case, let's say this is what photo side A is. You're in wearing your judge's hat now, and you look at this transcript, and you'd say, well, I don't see any people. No vegetation. Well, maybe this shape is a little bit like that, but that sure looks awful lot like a tree and people. I don't know if it's hot or not. I think we'd all agree that we'd give that a pretty low score, you know, maybe a 1, something like that on the TARG 0 to 7 scale. Okay, oops. Now, here's photo site B. This would be what you would see if under wins, correct? If under wins, in this example, because of the way the randomness worked out, the viewer will see this if under wins. Well, look at this one here. Huh, I've got people. I've got vegetation. Yeah, I've got a tree. I mean, this is darn good. And I can, hey, only 2 people. How come I didn't get 3? So I think you would agree this should be up. You know, I like more information, but virtually everything here is pretty darn good. You would give this a high score. And so as a judge, it's clear that you know, I'm putting words in your mouth, but don't you agree this would be photo side B?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
as a judge, you would then predict under, and that would go out to the group. The judge is, in fact, playing the role of group manager now. For a group, the judge does this seeing all the photo pairs and transcripts, and you would predict under. So you can see why you need 2 now, and I hope that's clear.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Very good. And just to make this so clear, because one of the wonderful things about precognition is if you do it the way we're doing it, there's no way you can cheat. These photos, and it's really important for you, your intellect and your subconscious, though your subconscious already knows it, but your intellect to know it, that these pictures are not even chosen until you send in your transcript. So you have no choice but to use your intellect. Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's great.
And every viewer gets a different pair using the WE code. So if somebody else had gone in before you, you really can't look at their pair. You have no choice but to look at your own future.
Well, that's
Wow.
fascinating. I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
Yep.
Huh. Amazing.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Because I want to go on to judging next, though I did put in this because I can't help remind you that your cue, your task is to describe and sketch your, whatever your coordinate is, feedback target. Oh, should I do it now or later? Well, let me do it now and I'll go to do it later. The question was asked, how come you have your choice actually of getting just 1 coordinate or 2 coordinates. The interesting thing about 2 coordinates, imagine in this example where the prediction was for over or under, and we said a basketball game, and we made a prediction here and it was under. Okay, I think you all get that with this example. Well, what if this person had decided to do 2 coordinates, and the second coordinate was 654,321? The way WE is set up, that would be the other side. So 654,321 would actually be associated with over winning. You would want that transcript to say things like structure, not over winning. It would be associated with over, period. Okay? Not over winning. It would be associated with over. Just like this coordinate was associated with under randomly, automatically the second coordinate is the other one. So if this was yes and no, once this one is set up to be under, the association, not win or lose, just the association, then 654,321 would automatically be associated with the other, whatever's left over. In this example, we said the first one was over, so 654,321 would automatically be associated with under, okay? Now, imagine if that under transcript said structure and drew something like a triangle, had an arc shape, maybe even had squares in it, an arc shape and then squares, where you would have given that a high score. That transcript then would be telling you that under wins directly. And it would be shown with photo site A, because under indeed was the winner. So
I'm not 100% sure I understand.
I know, and next time I do this, I think I'm going to have to make another picture with 2. The point is, and this is one of the actual, which I think is pretty good things about WE, is that you have 2 transcripts and both of them can be correct. Just like this transcript matched this one, if you had a second transcript, which is 654,321, right, a different number, you would have, if everything went the way you wanted it, that one would show up as feedback with this picture.
Okay.
So remember, at feedback time, in our example, you only saw with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that coordinate, you saw this feedback picture. If you had done a second one and it was 654,321, when that coordinate came up, you would see this feedback picture.
But then how do you know which is over and which is under, which one is going to win if you see both of them?
No, you mean at the end. Oh, you see each of them with its own coordinate. So it's like doing 2 entirely separate sessions with 2 different coordinates. So, I mean, I don't know why everybody gets confused, and even when I'm talking about it a little bit, you can see I got a little confused in talking about it, but it's not. There are 2 independent sessions, each of which has its own feedback target. And again, all you do is describe and sketch your feedback target for each.
But if you get both of them correct, then how are you able to tell?
Because each one coordinate in this, remember, this coordinate was associated with under, the other coordinate is associated with over. So that was
right.
If over wins. This is if under wins. Okay, I think what I do next might clarify this a little bit. It's interesting. As soon as I introduce the second coordinate, you sort of get confused, but don't, because they're just 2 independent two independent of predictions, and period. And you will see the appropriate coordinate associated with the appropriate feedback target. And it actually gives you two chances to get two good sessions. And a lot of times, and I feel really good when someone gives me sessions that match both well, but sometimes they only get one well. And you know what? That's very helpful too, because as you saw here, you can make a prediction with one good match.
Can I say something, Marty?
Sure.
I just wanted to comment that we until the sessions are turned in, we don't want to know if they're under or over or which one is assigned to. We want to let the WE software handle all of that. Just describe what's at that target reference number, and then do the second session, do the same thing, and then, you know, the beauty of the two-coordinate WE software is that normally when you do an ARV and you have a single session, one of those photo sites is going to be the incorrect one, and you can get displacement and accidentally view that. But if you have the two target WE going on, both of those photo sites have value, and I find it's helpful because it allows it to get it out of my mind, because I know that in the second session those descriptions are going to come up and they should be correct. So I think the WE software is really good for two coordinates because it allows me to get rid of that displacement, because I feel like describing everything, and if I have a single coordinate session, then I get displacement all over the place. But this two coordinate system works well. And even yesterday I did a session, we had two coordinates, and I got really high scores on one of them, and the other one I did horribly. But you know,
yep.
That's okay.
That was good. We got a nice hit off of that. I think.
Well, I meant the one last night, Marty, the one that we just did for the financial group.
Oh, it's going on now, right? Yeah, we don't know about that one yet. But you had done some before that were like that.
Right, yeah.
At least it was a good one and a 3.5 or something like that. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Someone asked a question.
Yeah, it's Lori. So if you have two cues for a session, is that four photos too?
No, see, that is the beauty of it. You would still have only these two targets. What John said was really a great summary of why we do like to do two cues, because the subconscious has access to everything. This concept of displacement, where some people make a good description of the wrong one, happens too often, even with independent judging, when there's no logical way that they could get access to it. And that's because the subconscious is curious. This way they don't have to be curious, because they're going to see both of them, because one of these potential targets will be associated with over, the other will be associated with under, and it's only after the game is over that you will know which is which. And so you only have two targets. Some people before WE, and probably still now, will give you four targets. In other words, they'll give you one coordinate with two targets and a different coordinate with two different targets. But at least I believe, and some others believe this is better, because the subconscious doesn't have to sort of peek at the other target being curious as it is. So there are only two targets, one associated with over winning, the other associated with, one associated with over, one associated with under. And that's randomly chosen at the beginning. And whether or not it's photo site A or B depends on the outcome of the game.
Marty?
Yep.
Just a quick question. Just before you said basically one coordinate is given with two targets, and then you said two coordinates. Did I hear you say two coordinates are given with two targets each?
Some people, One coordinate is given with two possible targets.
Like the baseball game and 2 pictures.
One baseball
And,
game, 2 pictures. In we give a second coordinate, but they're still the same 2 targets.
Oh, they're the same 2 targets. Thank you. Okay.
Right. And that's what's different about some other approaches would give 2 different targets. So then you would have 4 targets.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Then there would be 4. But okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, good. Hang in there. I don't know why. It just takes a while, and then once you get it, you got it. You know what I mean? And that's why we do these. And you hang in there and keep asking questions. And that's even after today, because these questions will come back again later. Trust me. Now, this is just to tell you every chance I get that intention is really important, and it's the intention to describe and sketch your, whatever the coordinate is, feedback target. This target is the feedback photo site. The judging session is just something else that either you or somebody else is doing. That is to be ignored when you're doing your remote viewing session and when you do your feedback session. Your feedback session, you intend pretty much the same thing. You know, describe and sketch your feedback target. Now you know the truth, but now you kind of do it from a place where you have your remote viewing sessions there. You know, you try to improve your ability to get the colors. You go back to your transcript and you circle the stuff you got, say, really well. And I'm going to do a feedback session webinar in the near future to really emphasize that. And that's the kind of thing I'm actually doing in a workshop that I'm now promoting, is really get into this stuff in more detail than we usually get a chance to do. But you see, ultimately, it's you who puts this together. What I'm trying to get you to do now is to know that you pay a lot of attention to the feedback session. It's not normal in our usual way of looking at the world to say, hey, you know what? It's over. I've got the outcome already. I did my session. There's nothing going on. I should stop. That is exactly the wrong thing to do. The right thing to do is to pay a lot of attention here. And that doesn't necessarily mean time. It means attention. You really are paying attention, and you're intending to share information back with your remote viewing session. It's not going to change this one, but you're telling your subconscious what you're going to be doing in the future. Okay, now the other thing which is very important is expectation. When you do your remote viewing session, get in the frame of mind. Sure, you've got doubts and all that stuff before and maybe even afterwards. Set all that stuff aside. During your cool down, when you get quiet, set not only your intention to describe and sketch this, but get into a place where you expect to do this well. Okay? So the expectation is good. And so not only do you intend to improve your RVing, you really expect to. And being in this as you are now makes sense really over the, I say the long term, but even medium term. You know, doing 1 or 2 of these isn't what this is about. Really getting this communication channel open between your consciousness, your conscious mind, your here and now, what's conscious with you now, and your subconscious, which is connected to everything, okay? And then it's a matter of focusing it. This comes and gets better and better over time with intention, expectation, and also attention. So it's all about this tasking queue. And you start here, as you well know. And now what I want to do, okay, I'm now going to get into the judging. And I actually want to do a case. There was someone else who asked the question. Turns out up to now I've been his independent judge. And he actually wants me to show him how to do self-judging. And so I want to talk about judging now, and I'm going to go through how he could self-judge. I'm going to pretend I'm him. And he does 2 coordinates. So we'll get into the 2 coordinates and if it makes sense and all that. Before I go forward, do you have any questions? The digital studio method that gave displacement on the last carve event. I don't know about that, James. So let me not talk about that. Maybe you can ask a question separate. But hey, we occasionally get displacement as well. Displacement, if it wasn't for displacement, this would be a done deal. So subconscious minds, for whatever reason, do displacement. I first want to tell you what analysis judging is not. Okay? Here's a little cartoon that I love. We have a skeptic here giving our remote viewer a challenge. You know, you tell me what's in this envelope, and I am going to judge it and tell you whether you're right or not, okay, whether it's good or not. Well, he says it's a charcoal drawing of a woodchuck eating a small orange. That's a little bit too high level, but for a cartoon, okay, that's pretty good. Nice try, our skeptic says, you little fraud. That's a long way from an ink drawing versus a charcoal drawing of a beaver versus a woodchuck eating a tangerine, small orange. So you can definitely be too hard as a judge. And in fact, I think you want to lean, you mostly want to be, it's hard to say. It's an intellectual process where you're honest, totally honest, but you recognize, and this comes after doing really a relatively few sessions, and we're going to do one here that I haven't even seen, so you'll get to see at least my perspective on this. You'll see that the subconscious communicates in marvelous ways. It might very well have in there a beaver picture, and it might actually, AOL, analytical overlay, the intellect might say another kind of an animal, or it might say something, it might only get something like furry or draw a shape like some sort of animal. You know, it rarely will label it this high level as a beaver, but it might get another animal. And you will find out how your subconscious mind works. A lot of viewers love to do self-judging because they can interpret what their subconscious is doing. They think better than a judge. And we have a lot of very, very good viewers that do self-judging. Okay, here's what I want to do now. I asked Bill Higgins if it was okay to show this. He's the one that now wants to go into self-judging. And he sent me 2 transcripts. This was the one he wanted me to show him how to do independent judging, interestingly enough. So he sent me 2 transcripts, which I have. Let me get them. Wait, I have them here. Here's one. And there's the other. Okay, so here are 2 transcripts. Now, he got that after doing what I think all of you are familiar with, which is the tasking from a group manager in one form or another. So this was a we tasking, and every person in the group gets this kind of tasking. And here's where you have a choice of doing 2 coordinates or 1 coordinate, right down here. He always does 2, and I accept for newbies. Newbies is sometimes good to do one just because it's simpler, but eventually I think it's better to do two. And so I'm going to go in as Bill. Since these are his transcripts and these are his coordinates. So I put in his name, and then it's the beta group. We're doing 2 coordinates. And now I have to browse, and this is what is new to Bill. Bill would get to this page, he'd get these 2 coordinates, he'd do his transcripts, and then he would email them to me, and then I would pick up this process. I actually uploaded them. What Bill now has to do is the equivalent of this. And he already had them in his system, and this is for newbies. If there are any questions about getting them into your system, now's the time to ask. But in this day and age, people tend to use their smartphones, and I think that's what he did. I think he takes pictures, but there's still scanners out there. But one way or another, you need to get this into your computer. And let's see, this is not where I want to be. I want to be, so then you have to find it. So that's what I'm trying to do now. And I believe I put it in Documents, App, and it should be, there they are. So there's Bill 44702. Was that the first one? Let's see, I think it should go there. Right, so here it is there. I'm opening it, so it goes in right there. So that's how you get your transcript, and it takes JPEGs, PDFs. Some people do multiple page transcripts. And then this is the 929 one, right in there. I submit, and as soon as I hit submit, when I hit that submit button, that's when this was chosen. So Bill did not know, nobody knew, not even the computer, until it got to the point where it said randomly choose one out of these 800. And this now is the photo site A we were talking about. Notice down here, there are 2 coordinates. Those are his 2 coordinates. And this is where we do the analysis and the judging. And this is where the TARG scale is. You can click on it and get it to come up, anytime you want. I think you're familiar with this, but the key numbers are, we consider 3 to be just, yes, you've made some psychic precog contact, but not strong enough to wager. 4 is a pretty good one, strong enough to wager. 3.5 is, I'm willing to wager, but just barely, okay? In other words, we're not going to bet any money at 3. At 3.5, just barely. 4 is good. 5 is very good. Unambiguous, unique, matchable elements. Another animal, small, similar to maybe the animal in the picture, if there was one. And a few of those. There's elements. So, 2 of those, 3 of those, but still some incorrect data. By the time you get up to 6 and 7s, now you've got this analytical data. And what was learned long, long ago is the subconscious prefers, at least at the beginning, sometimes if you do these really long sessions, you'll start getting more and more analytical information. But at the beginning, it sort of gives information the way maybe a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old would good. You certainly see the shapes and you might get good sketches, but you're just not going to name things. And that's why on the right side of the paper, you might think the naming comes from the intellectual side, and we call those analytical overlays. But nevertheless, sometimes they're right. And that's what 6 and 7s are, when you're naming the things and giving the function of things, really high-level intellectual stuff. Okay, so you have access to that anytime you want it from this judging page. So let's now do 448702. So that'll be the first transcript. So this is just as if this was the only transcript he had. And let me see if I can put this. I should be able to put this over there. Okay, that's pretty cool. So we can all see this. I have not done this yet. So you can help me with this, please. We're going to be judging this for him. It turned out, anyway, we're going to be judging this for him. It turns out it's late, so it will have no effect because he had problems getting it to me, or I had problems receiving it. Anyway, one of the reasons he's doing this is, as you can see, his handwriting is a little hard to read. And when I was his judge, I made him give me on a separate piece of paper all the words. He may be getting a little bit tired of doing that. So we were actually going to do this together, but I asked him if I could do it with you. So let's take a look at this. I often don't even look at the other picture. Remember, I don't know if this is supposed to match this one or photo side B, which I can see when I click here. Sometimes I do look at them both in advance because I'm going to see them both. Let's do that now just for fun. I'm going to show you the other one. So that's the second picture. This is a very intellectual process, okay? So I have access to both. But now let's do judging against this one, and let's see what we've got. I don't see any red. I usually do this on a sheet of paper, and I mark these with a 0, 1, or a half. So I would give that a 0. Hard, well, yeah, there's something hard there. I'd give that a 1. Blue was pretty good. In fact, I probably should be sort of adding these up. Let me actually do this. There's a 1. There's a 0. Granite, I don't think so. A 0. Brown, yeah. Blue I got already. Black. You know, for me, and judges are just like everybody else. I see black there, but there's black in almost every single picture. I actually only give black a half. So everybody is a little bit different, and everybody has a different style. But this idea of counting up what's right versus what's not right and giving it weighting factors, had he drawn a picture which looked very much like that, I might actually give it 2 points. I don't see a white cloud. I see a little dark, but that's pretty vague. Is it noisy? You think that's noisy? I don't think so. I can't tell. Sometimes I just do a dash. Purple, no. Hard. Okay, and then he's got these wavy line. That's his A, so that's not new words. So those are his A and B. Those of you that know a little bit about CRV, this is where he's just getting in there. But he said object, barrier. I wouldn't call that a barrier, but it's certainly an object. Object. I don't see any sign of people. Yeah, go ahead.
When you're judging, do you care about the noise to signal ratio, or are you just counting what you see as hits? Because I see a lot of...
Go ahead.
I see a lot of the stuff that I can make out is not present in the photo, so that, you're not counting those against him.
Well, that's why I do zeros, and sometimes I only do it conceptually. So I have 1s and 0s. Lynn Buchanan teaches checks and no checks, and then he counts them up, and that's what we do here. I'm counting up numbers, and so it will be a ratio. So we will be taking into account misses. Okay, do you understand? So that's why I'm doing ones and zeros and halves.
Yeah, okay. That was my question.
Yeah, I do. But notice down here I see fluid and water. So I'd give those ones. But I don't see any green. That would be a 0. I see
I was asking
blue.
because when I self-judge, I automatically know that it takes me about 5 to 10 minutes into the session, and then I start getting really good, appropriate data. But you know, that first 5 to 10, I almost put all of it in the AOL category, but I tend to write it down anyways. And when I self-judge, I don't necessarily count those against my score.
And that's the way you should do it, knowing yourself. I have another person who I independently judge, and he told me something very similar. His last page is the one he wants me to give the most credit to. So, yes, you need to know yourself, and you should judge it appropriately. But this is why people like to do self-judging, because they know that. But if you work with an independent judge and you talk to them, they can take this sort of thing into account. But I think Bill here wants to do self-judging because I think he believes, and we have a pretty good hit rate together, but he thinks he can do better by being a self-judge, and he wants to try it, and more power to him. I'd like everybody to do things that feel right for them and try it out and get enough data to know. That's one of the reasons you want to be in this for the long term. Okay, so having said all of that, I'm looking at my list here, and I can't read all of this. Suit, white cloud, dark purple, Messiah. I would say, see, and the other thing that I do, I consider the Gestalt level. And this is actually one of the things that Joe McMonagle talks about. He gives the Gestalt level 50% credit. And I do that too, kind of roughly. And what is the Gestalt here? The Gestalts here are water, certainly. I would say a person, and maybe sort of a vertical aspect. I personally happen to believe that geometry is very important, because I don't care how people think the picture is good or bad, there's always geometry. You might not get any colors, though here he got brown and blue. So I would say this one, he just didn't really get the Gestalt. He got the fluid and water, but he didn't get anything else. I don't see, well, no, I'm looking there. It does say living. I see living there for the first time. You see living right there? I would read that as living.
What does it say under living? Smells like something?
Smoky, popcorn.
Oh.
I think something like that. Emotions, happy. Can't tell, but that shows he did get there was a person there.
You know what's interesting about that comment is that it looks like a Cirque du Soleil type show where they might have popcorn in the audience or something like that. But it's not in the photo, right?
That is correct. So, or easily implied. He looks like there's something going on over here, but it's got to be easily implied or in the picture. Okay, so I'm looking at this, and now I am in as an independent judge here between a 3 and a 3.5. I don't know if this is enough for me to even put a few bucks on, but I have to make a decision. And anybody else want to weigh in? Do you think it should be a little below wagering, or would you be willing to wager a few bucks on this?
I would give it less than 3.5.
You would give it a 3. Some might only give it a 2.5. What do you think? It's good to force yourself to make judgments. Otherwise, you're not doing ARV. ARV ultimately comes down to the way you get to make a judgment about a yes/no question. Up, down, etc. Anybody else want to jump in?
I think something like a 3.
Yeah, that's okay. Does anybody think it should be higher? Okay,
No.
Let's make it a 3 and let's go on. This is mostly for demonstration purposes. Okay, so we judged this transcript, one coordinate, just like you would normally do when you go in with a single coordinate. Now let's judge it against photo site B, which is this one. And I can make that bigger for you. Okay, so now I look at this, and this rectangle and hard, you know, is a little bit sort of closer. I see rectangles here, you know, the overall shape of a rectangle. But now I don't see any of the water stuff. Blue is now off, red is off, hard is on, granite is on, brown is okay, black again, notice it's hard to find a picture that does not have some black in it. And it's true of white as well. You know, sometimes if it's dominant, where that's almost the gestalt, then I'll give it more credit. Though here, this may be close to that. This might be worth a 3/4, maybe even a 1. White cloud. You know, you can see judging is not that easy because there are judgments involved, and yet here you are, you have to do it. That's why you love when you get up to those 4s and 5s where you feel really comfortable. But, you know, I've got some of the individual elements here. Feels like, I wish Bill were here so he could judge it. Open rectangle, red, hard, granite. The granite fits brown, black. Yeah. So again, I don't know. To me, outdoors is right. The other one was outdoors as well. You got a lot of the same kind of things that were on. Okay, let's just go back. Again, this is for an example. What do you think? Was this closer? A 3, a 2.5? No one's going to help me. I'm going to give it a 2.5.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's a good.
Yeah, you know, it's the fact that the
Can't read
water and all
his
that is so off. Okay, so notice what we did. And if all that was there here, we would pass. And that would be the end of it. Okay, when we were to submit this, and this was the one, it would come into us as a pass, and we'd be leaning to whatever we eventually see as photo site A. Actually, we'd be leaning towards, slightly leaning. Actually, I would call this a pass. I wouldn't even say leaning, but whatever side was associated with this, over or under, we're slightly leaning in that direction. But this is a clear pass. Okay, let's bring up the other one now. No, that's the same one. 448 is the one we did. Somewhere here I should be able to get the other one, right? That's the 448. Ah, it's way down there. Okay. Oh no, that was somebody else that I guess I still had here. That's 448. You saw it. Did I close it? This is Bronco. This is what I spend my mornings doing. I can't find it. So let's, I don't know, it's got to be, there it is. Okay. So I'll now put that one over here. So now we've got the 929620, right? So that's the other transcript right here. That checks that. You always got to make sure that you're, as a judge, you're doing that right. And this is totally independent. Totally independent. So if this were over, this one would be under. If this was under, this one will be over. But I don't know that, and I don't care. We don't want the judge to know. We don't want that to influence him in any way. We now do mostly intellectual, but we take into account everything we know about the way remote viewers do their transcripts. And now let's judge this. Okay, so I'm looking at this, and I see blue, white. I'm not even writing 0 on 1. I'm just sort of doing this. We'll do this. Red, you guys can read it as well as I can, so, you know, you start doing your own independent. There's blue again. This is the CRV object, fluid. So we got fluid here again, object, brown. So this is similar to the last ones, which you don't, you know, doesn't help. It tends to give you the same kind of scoring. You'd like distinguished. Silver, blue, red, no red, but there's hard. I'm seeing a lot of the same words I got before. Shiny, I don't know, maybe. Water. So you got water again. Man-made, parallels. I see only parallel there. Outdoors, yes. Smelly, fresh air, living, again, energy flow. I don't see energy flow, but there's water, wave, white, brown, dark. So this looks to me, and I see a lot of the same words I saw in the other one. For whatever reason. And I will say, and this is sort of funny, that this whole session and everything we're doing, and the fact that he hasn't done any of this before, and he's going to be looking at the webinar afterwards, which is what he told me when he gets back. Who knows? All of this could be feeding back into him. Hi, Bill. You agree roughly with the 3?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes you get
Now,
sessions. Do you think it should be lower, higher? What's your judgment? Someone said no.
3 or below.
3 or below. Okay, so I agree.
Yeah.
Hey,
Now, I have a question, Marty.
Sure,
May
shoot.
I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Now, it's a different coordinate, but it's the same 2 pictures every time?
Yes, see, okay, thank you for bringing that up. It's the same 2 pictures in WE every time. Only one of them is going to be the target. Let me make this absolutely clear. Only one of them. Right now, these are, notice they're called photo sites here. I went out of my way not to call them targets. All they are potential targets. Get that? They are potential
light bulb
targets.
over the head moment. Yeah.
One of these, say this was over. If over is the winner, then I'll know photo site A is associated with this, independent of what he did. That's the way I get the association to give you feedback, is based on what happens in the game. At this point, you know, we don't know. So, but what I do know is one of these photo sites will be associated with one of these coordinates. I don't know which one yet. The other photo site will be associated with the other coordinate. So they become known targets with known associations after the game. And only then can I give you feedback.
Okay.
What we're trying to do now as a judge is saying, since the viewer's task was to describe and sketch the feedback, and my viewers, all viewers, do that with odds better than chance, I want to look at the transcripts to see which one I think they are describing. So that's what I do as a judge. So let's see, that's what I do as a judge. I'm trying to find out which one you did. Okay. Here I go back. Now I look at this one, and blue, no. White, no. Well, yeah, there's plenty of white, but as I say, there's always plenty of white. Not always, but often. Brown, yes. Red, water, man-made. Yes, of course. Now this has the parallels, so that's interesting. In fact, that could, that gets a little bit to the Gestalt level. Repeat, okay, repeating, that also is there. Parallels and repeating. Bright, outdoors, yes. Fresh air.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit, Marty? On the words?
Living in, I don't know what. I don't see energy flow. I would say it is quiet. Man-made. It's good sometimes to see those. I'd like to always show the outstanding ones, but 30 to 40% of the time, historically, even the best viewers pass. The analysis, a judge says, there's just not enough here to make a very, very strong statement. That might not be true of a Joe McMonagle, but I've seen plenty of times when he passed as well. I don't know if it's 30, 40%, but so never feel bad if you pass. Fluid, water, no. Wave, no. Silver, black. Okay. So this is, I think, an example where when I go back now to the analysis, I am going to maybe give this another 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, he just didn't this time, and I know you all understand, and he won't be the least bit embarrassed by this because he's been around a long time. This is a totally passed session. Okay, so now we can put in comments here and finish. But before I do this, I want to go back now to the 2 sessions. I think you all understand. If all there was this one, I think you all know what to do. The example we gave, this might have been a 5. And the other one, no, actually it was the other way around. The first one was, didn't match well, okay? This one was a very good match, maybe a 5 or a 6. If he went with this, even with 2 coordinates, this would determine the outcome. So this would be predicting, just like we did in the case with the fire, this would be predicting under if this was over, because this is the winning side, okay? And over, we would say, nope, not the winning side. What we're predicting here is the other side. If this was associated with over, then the prediction would be under here. Well, if you did a second one, since if this was over, this would be under, what you would love to have happen is a 5 here. Notice there you would get then a good match with the first photo with 1 coordinate, a good match with the second photo side B, with the other coordinate. So
I see.
This is what you love to see, either this way or this way. Notice if it had been high score here and high score here and low, you'd feel very comfortable saying whatever was associated with this, over or under, is the winning side. But in this case, you feel very comfortable, if this is what it looks like, going with whatever's associated with 929 as being the winning side. You know, what's so amazing about all this, it takes a lot of words to explain it. And yet when you do it, just describe and sketch your coordinate target photo site, right? I mean, because you can
Right.
see in this situation, man, I would have a really, really high confidence because you did well on both.
Oh, I
And you can
see.
see why you have two targets and why you can get away not needing four, because the subconscious is able to describe each of these with the appropriate side based on it being the feedback target. And I really encourage people to do each of their coordinates a day apart so they don't sort of have any memory of it. Most people don't listen to me because when they get into doing it, they like to do it the same day, but I think they do, you know, at least wait a half an hour or something like that, do something in between, because these are truly independent. They're independent predictions. And you want to get your conscious mind and your subconsciousness to be in that mode. Okay, so I'm going to finish this off for him. I'm going to say this was shown as an example in a webinar. Well, I'll even say Newbie webinar. He knows that. In the Newbie webinar. Your feedback will follow. And have all of you seen your feedback emails that then give it to you? The general manager usually does that. Oh, look what I did. I left the 6 and the 5, but see, I can go back. Let me see if I can get it from here. None of you caught that, but I'll resubmit
Nope.
it here. This was a 3, 2.5. Was this a 3 and a 3? Good
I think
enough.
so.
Yeah, okay. This was part of a Newbie webinar. Feedback email. So I hope all of you have gotten at least one example of a feedback email. Notice now it says pass because none of the CRs are over 3.5. And if two CRs were at 3.5 or even 4.4 in the opposite direction, that would be a pass too. So sometimes when their numbers are close, a person wants to take it as a pass and they will change their numbers. Otherwise, the system will take it as the higher number. But
so if we want to force it into a pass, we just have to match either score it below 3.5 or match the numbers.
Numbers across the diagonal, the higher number. In other words, sometimes, and I've seen this legitimately, where this number might be a 5 and this number might be a 4.5. That, of course, is what you'd love. But what happens if this number is a 5 and this number is a 4.5? Okay, now you're saying this side, oh, the 5, but this side, whatever it is, the opposite is a 4.5. I really want to pass. Okay, then you need to change this one to a 5. So I said that wrong. The vertical ones need to be the same if you want to force a pass. The highest one has to have the vertical one across it to be the same if you want to pass. I wonder if that's true this way too. I just can't remember. A versus B. Yeah, it's probably true here too. So let's say you got a 5 this way and a 4.5 this way. You're, well, you're saying that this one, which is matching this one, is the winning side, but you're saying the other side is pretty darn close. So if they're close, where you can see that the prediction is not going to be diagonal, and you want to force a pass because the numbers are, say, only differ by a half, maybe even 1, and you're uncomfortable, you should force them to be the same. Okay, but as I say, I think for now that might be too subtle for newbies. You can't see me. I don't know. I don't know what I did with my thing. I guess I can. It got turned off. There I am. I didn't turn it off on purpose. The system did it. So I hope that clarified the issue of why 2 coordinates. Is that clear, or hopefully clearer than mud anyway? Okay.
Yes.
Artie,
Uh-huh.
I thought that this person, this remote viewer, made contact with both targets. And I think, I do that a lot too. So I was wondering, is there anything besides your intention to get it so that you just view your feedback?
You mean in terms of setting up, I'm showing this one because this sort of lets us talk about everything. You're saying, is there more than intention, expectation? Probably.
Yeah, make sure that you just view the feedback photo.
When you do, I see, when you do the feedback photo, that's really a very, very good question. And
no, I mean when viewing.
Other people, okay, wait, I'm going to make you a little bit louder. I don't know, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Okay, go ahead, say it again. I've made you louder now for me.
When I'm remote viewing, I seem to contact both targets.
Whether you want to or not.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Yes, I do have a lot of suggestions, and I've done webinars in the past where I've used objects, I've used food, I've used saying the coordinate out loud. Notice if when you do your RV session, you do any of those things, they act as a beacon, okay? And there's another word for that, but beacon works. Imagine if, and this is my favorite one, but I stopped doing it because I was eating too much chocolate. Imagine if you took a candy kiss and just as you were getting ready to do your cool down and you took half a bite, half of the candy kiss, and you bit into it, and you had the intention of doing the same thing at feedback time for this coordinate. That could act as a beacon because now your intention is to go to your feedback session when you eat the other half of the candy kiss.
Huh. Interesting.
Ideas like that. I had one woman who would, on her remote viewing session, I haven't thought about her for years, this was quite a while ago, on her piece of paper, she would do a design. One time she might put a bunch of triangles or a special kind of squiggle that I don't know how she came up with it. I only saw one of hers and they weren't quite random, but she would do a design, okay? Knowing that on her feedback, because what she always did was took a new sheet of paper to do a feedback session, and she'd start that by putting in that same design. Okay, so the design was not part of the session, And I never recommended it and hadn't thought about it for years because I always thought it might interfere with the ideogram or shapes or stuff like that. But she didn't. And that's probably the most important thing I'm going to say to you today is you need to personalize every single one of these steps. Once you understand the online protocol, which is a lot of what we've been talking about here, within that, it all becomes very personal. How you do your remote viewing session, it becomes very personal. Whether you use a beacon and whether the beacon is drawing something on the sheet of paper, you take a bite of a chocolate chip cookie. Notice I always go to the same sort of examples. um, or hold. You might hold an object, and that's going to be the same object that you hold at feedback time for that coordinate. And you do something different for the second coordinate. That could help you in terms of getting information about both targets. Doesn't that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And what
Thank you.
Yeah, and what makes even more sense is to personalize that so you come up maybe with other ways that nobody else has thought of. Or at least you go about finding an object, so that becomes sort of part. This is the object I'm going to use for this coordinate. So you're really embedded in yourself. Other questions, comments, please?
I have a comment on that. Might help with that last question.
Okay.
Displacement question. You're developing a feedback process that's tailored for you and your own psychology is probably the most important. It's probably the most important skill. So there should be some lengthy process you go through during your feed, not just looking at the photo and seeing what matched, but I actually do another session personally while the picture's in front of me, and I write down descriptions that I want to send back in time to myself, and I describe only this target and some other. I have a whole process, and that seems to help quite a bit. And the other thing is when I started doing, rather than just normal single targets, I started doing the two-target system within WE. Just give it a try. I mean, it seems complicated, but it really does seem to reduce that displacement because both photos are actually being used rather than both photo sites are being used rather than one of them being not applicable. It's
Right.
something to judge against.
Trying to hide it. And when you try to hide something, somehow maybe that grabs the attention of consciousness. Anyway, I agree with John. Go ahead and give it a shot. You got obviously nothing to lose, and just do each one independently. And what he said about the feedback is right on. In fact, even if you don't do a new sheet of paper session, you are doing a session. We call it a feedback session. It is a session to be taken seriously. I, on my transcripts, always circle big the stuff which I got really, really well. And then sometimes on that transcript or another sheet of paper, I will put, gee, I wish I had done this. Now, I want to talk about that because that step is very important. I believe the I wish I had done this should be just pushing things a little bit from where you are. If you're just starting to get colors or you haven't gotten colors, say, I wish I had gotten this one major color that was there, and really focus on that color and how you think it might get set back to the remote viewing session time. Using, again, your remote viewing sessions. So you kind of work it. And you know what? You'll be improving a little bit that skill. It will not have had effect for the last one, but the fact that you're telling your subconscious, hey, I'd like you to be able to do those colors a little better, is something. And you do that with 3 or 4 different things that make sense to you. But you don't go all the way to getting a overlay of the target. That's going too far for most of us. You know, so you just try to get a little more. At least that's my advice. But again, you make it personal to you. You do what feels right to you. And also, this is the place where it gets to be, even if you get a miss, it should be fun. You should do things which are creative, because the one thing you don't want to have happen with remote viewing and ARV the same way is you don't want it to get boring. So, and you do want to keep getting better at it. You know, some people put out that you somehow reach one level and you can't get better. I frankly do not believe that. I believe the feedback session and ARV will actually allow you to just get better and better forever. And better is defined that includes enjoying it more, but it includes developing the ability to do colors if you don't have that now, improving the way you get the shapes. You know, it just goes on and on. Other questions, comments?
This has been very helpful, Marty.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, this really is a good time, and you will not only be helping yourself. Even if you have a question and you think it's a dumb one, now's the time to ask it, because other people will probably have a similar question.
Marty, as a newbie, are there resources that I could look up in terms of the protocol for associative remote viewing?
Yeah, I mean, on our website, let me find our website. There's a whole place with lots of videos. Okay, you know that. And there is one other place that has different videos. Okay, you know our website, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let me go to the other one. The other one is I do have a YouTube channel, and for whatever reasons, I put some of this stuff. In fact, all the free ones tend to go there, and then they get copied over. So here's my channel. So I have a lot of ones, some that go back quite a ways, so you're welcome to look there. And then I also, every now and then, I guess it looks like my channel, when I go to other people's that I think are interesting, I don't know if I do anything special to put them on, but you can see I have other people.
Some of the recent free ones we did are pretty good, including doing sessions during the webinar, and we judged a couple of sessions, I believe, during them.
Yeah, and some of those roulette ones. Yeah, in fact, here they are. They're on the free one, and they're here. These ARV training. The first day, I went as slowly as I know how over very much of the same stuff. And then we did a real session, and then the second day, I talked about Forex more, but I got into stuff. And then if you see ones with roulette, well, this is group managing. That was the group manager trading, but I have other ones with roulette. I think those might all be on the free. The roulette ones are all good because they go all the way through, including the feedback session. So you get to see that. So.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And I'll tell you what's even better than that. Jump in. Don't be afraid to jump in. You know, this is how you learn. Just do it. That's really the best way.
Sure.
You can always score your sessions as a pass. It doesn't matter what you know.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Oh, that's true. I have a question.
Sure, good.
As far as the betting goes,
Mhm.
when we hit the correct one, as far as winning or losing,
Mhm.
are we allowed to wager ourselves on that certain event?
Well, yeah, when a prediction comes back to you, okay, there's enough information there so you can wager. It's not at feedback. It's after the judging is done. Here, let me show you
Mm-hmm.
an example of that. Um, here, well, let me do car because sports are the one. A lot of the Forex, it's a little bit more complicated, but let me just see here. Prediction. Okay, so here's a typical way a prediction would come back, right? Once you do it, the prediction comes back, remember, before the outcome. So this is a true prediction. And the prediction was under. So it says very clearly under, but that's the group prediction. And what it is predicting is that side 2 will be the winning side. Now, if you go back to your prediction, you might have given a higher score to side 2 because I might have, that you might have, like here I give words. I don't always do this, but here I said for side 1, which turned out to be over, and the judge didn't even know that, until when he put in the prediction, he knows. But side 1 was over, and there were 5 of them. Side 2 was under, and there were 9 of them. And also it turned out there was some CR equals 6s in this case. You might have done one of those, John.
Thanks for putting those comments in too. That was really helpful as far as your judging comments.
Yeah, and I think
one of those sessions was mine.
And so this, sitting here as a group manager, this was easy. Lots of times, trust me, it's not easy. Even here, we had 6 passes. That's why passes are fine. But notice there were 5 people who had scores which went in the other direction. And there's no, ultimately this is a very personal process, and it's fun to do it with a lot of other people and to try to learn from other people. But some of these people may very well have gone over. It turned out under was the hit, okay? So we actually had, the outcome was a nice hit here. But you have enough information here to know if you agree with the under prediction, or you might want to go the other way. And remember, none of the groups are 100%. So you might really think yours is the way to go, and you obviously can wager any way you want. And you should not feel like you're going against the group. We've had that discussion, and some people, now this is opinion. If you really feel deep down that, gee, you're going against the group prediction and I'm doing something wrong, you probably shouldn't do it because you need to go with what feels good to you. But I actually recommend people go with their own prediction if they feel real comfortable with it. That's what I recommend, because at least they're showing their subconscious they're being self-consistent with their own prediction, and they have faith in it. And if they get a miss, just like everybody else who gets a miss, and there were 5 people who got misses here, then you go in and you learn something. You go back and you look at the whole process, and hopefully you learn something.
Right. Now, as far as reading this goes, side 1 would be the Rockies and side 2 would be the Orioles. And so the interpretation of that would be...
Notice the prediction is over-under. What that means is the total runs scored by the Rockies and the Orioles. So the Rockies score plus the Orioles score. I didn't even put
Oh.
it here. Sometimes that's what over under means.
Oh.
So, and the reason for that is that turns out to be very close to a 50-50 proposition. The odds makers set it up usually as a 50-50 proposition, where sometimes you have the number ranked team versus the lowest ranked team, and then the odds will be really distorted, and I don't like to do that. Other people do, but I don't. So
Plus, you have the complication of noise on that channel because so many people would want the Rockies to win that it would be,
that could
you know,
be.
but when you're just betting on total runs, there's no expectation from anybody, really.
That's right. And the odds makers are very good. Like in this case, they turned out to be off, but there must have been some really good hitters versus an average pitcher. And they had predicted that you could go either way on this. You could have gone over, you could have gone under, you could have bet either way. Turned out the outcome was indeed under.
So you have to know a lot about sports betting in order to
Nothing.
bet wisely as well.
Nothing.
No.
We know you don't have to know anything about sports, except if you want to wager, you have to know enough how to get to an offshore site, because this tells you if you want to predict this way, or if you wanted to use your own session, and then you can go to, if you're living in the U.S., an offshore site. But there are a lot of people who live in Europe and Canada, and there are all kinds of legal places you can wager. Vegas.
I fit into that category too. I don't even watch sports, but I always do my sessions anyways.
Exactly. I would say there are about 40% of the people do it to improve their communication channel, and just because it does help in other things as well. You just become more sensitive.
And this is just fantastic because for years and years I've had this talent and studied RV and never had any way to anything to do with it. So this is wonderful and amazing.
Good, thank you. Yeah,
allowing this.
Yeah, I'm encouraging it. I always manage to get to this because it's what drives me with all this. Is I really believe we are part of the already going paradigm shift, consciousness paradigm shift. Imagine a world where even 10% of the people were doing this regularly, and not only in sports and Forex, but making decisions in their lives which they appreciated. It's not like a onesie decision. You need to find things where if you're wrong, it's not disastrous.
Right.
See what I'm saying? Though I've had, okay. That's how I still think this is the best way to use this. When a person gets up to where they can really know they're at 90% and feel comfortable at 90%, then you can start making more important decisions than wagering. But even then, you have to know that it's a decision which is at 90%. I think it's going to be, when we get to that point, we'll be in, when 10% of the people are even at 70 or 80% of the success rate and applying it and talking and no longer embarrassed about talking about it with their friends, we will already be well into the paradigm shift. That's what I'm about, trying to get as many people as possible to use their precognition and to train it to that level.
I agree.
Okay, other questions, comments? Okay, maybe we're done.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Once we've given our CR scores, those are locked in? We can't go and change them, can we? Or
well,
I had a session yesterday that I had second thoughts about after I was done. I was actually going to increase the score. It wasn't that relevant because it was already pretty high, but and it was in the back of my head for like an hour after my scoring.
Yeah. Let me tell you the problem with that. What you're looking at now is the raw database. okay? And I can change things, or I eventually would like to get into the code where I can make things so that the last one is the one that stays. Unfortunately, the way it's coded now is your first prediction, you know, the idea is that your first inclination is usually the right one. That's the way this is written. So I do have the ability to go in and change things. Like you're going to actually see me, a few of you who might know about computers, this is using Perl, but if you remember, the Bill Higgins had 6, which I want to take out because that was a mistake. That was a raw error. And let me see where that is. So here are the CRs. Yeah, here it is. You see here? These are how the numbers go in. There was a 1 and a 5, and there over here is the 6 and the 3. So I want to take that line out because it would be the one that's used, as opposed we actually did just what you're talking about. Here's the 3 and the 3. And so that's the one which I want to be in there. So I have made a correction. I'm very careful with the database, but it takes, you know, it takes time to do it. So I've just fixed the one with Bill Higgins. I mean, if you think it's very important and a minor change, I would say, please don't ask me to do that. You know about it. And at the feedback time, you can even comment on it, and then it will be in the record, you know what I mean, for you. But if it isn't going to change the judgments or any of that in any significant way, I would say don't do it. Well, I mean, you can do it, but it's the first one that's going to get used until I do the programming change, which is not going to happen for a long time just because there's too much going on. In fact, my next programming task is to make sure people don't get repeats with their target pairs. That, you know, we have 800 of them, but people are doing them enough that they see the same one sometimes, just because we have a lot of people around. Anyway, that's the programming task I'm doing now. I'm sorry, I told you more than you needed to know. But anyway, with your question is I can make changes to the program if there are out and outright errors, and I'm willing to do that. But otherwise, I prefer not to go into the database. Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you all for coming, and just keep precogging.
Thanks, Marty.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Marty.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're all very welcome, and I will
Appreciate you.
thank you.